Leila Adu, thank you very much for speaking with me. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, considering that's the words we always use here in New York right now in this pandemic. Doing pretty well considering. Yeah.
You know, we're hearing horrible things about the situation in New York. What is it like to be in New York at this time?
Well, what I would usually say is I'm very lucky. So I have a job. Uh, it didn't go away. I can go online. It was just the stress of sort of everything changing. And me, and I'm an international person like you. So there's people to think about New Zealand, people think about in London, while being here and sort of quarantined here. So there's this feeling of kind of worry about the world. The first thing I worried about was that thing of just knowing that homeless people, people of color, incarcerated people are so much more likely to die. And that's happening all the time, but that's happening now. Their health is already more at risk.
One of the strands in your art is this idea of music and the arts in general as a catalyst for social change.
Yeah, that's totally true. And I've got to say, I always, it's because I'm old now, Mark. I think one of the coolest things about this interview is you conducted my first orchestra piece when I was still at Victoria University of Wellington. Now it's the New Zealand School of Music, like 20 years ago. Yeah, it was like my first orchestra piece. And then then I remember doing an NZSO piece around that time, like a couple of years later when I was doing my master's, I think. And that piece was on Pour mon Tonnerre. I wrote this piece called Pour mon Tonnerre. It's like from a poem of an Algerian poem by a French woman, and it's really intense. It's sort of saying like to a policeman who was beating the Algerians, like saying to the French policeman, "Did you like stir your coffee this morning? Did you stroke your kids' hair before you came to beat me up?" And then she's seeing rainbows and stuff. And I did this beautiful French impressionist style orchestration with some African percussion at the end that kind of takes over, and another piece of Chinese poetry. And I sang them both, one in Mandarin and one in French. And so I think that this thing kind of started out like that. And then I think in my kind of maybe naivety, I just thought, oh, well, me singing songs that are sort of heartfelt will just sort of do something in the world. I don't know. I know it's kind of silly, but I really have always felt that just being in touch with emotions is going to change things for people, as in opening up your emotions and maybe being aware that we're connected. That's the thing I'm always trying to go for. But I think being in the United States and doing my PhD at Princeton, the weirdness of being at Princeton, which I never thought I would do, it just kind of happened that way. And then like knowing about police brutality, killing people that look like me, I started to write about the news even more. I mean, I have an album called Ode to the Unknown Factory Worker. So it's not that I didn't do protest music before, but I think that even in my notated works and, everything just started, I still have love songs or whatever, but it's mostly going towards this thing of just making the connection between all people. Like that's what I'm trying to do. It sounds a little like, whatever, you're trying to do that, but that's what I think I'm doing when I'm writing music. I don't know if it ever happens really, but that's what I feel like I'm doing. So that thing hasn't really changed over all these years, but I think I've become a bit more overt about it, and all the work, and making it more specific to now and news events now.
One of the themes that I find really interesting is this idea of communication and
Yep.
This absolute necessity for a composer to maybe not make oneself intelligible necessarily, but to communicate something to an audience, to create a connection. And
Yeah.
what you say, I think is totally in line with that. But there is that added sense of urgency in your work in terms of you're focusing on specific injustices in society.
I think for me, I guess I haven't had an easy life. I didn't have a very privileged early life. And I'm also a person of color. And so I'm a woman, I can't separate those, I can't just say like, oh, well, that never happened. Well, it's not like I can think about it all the time, but when I see a person, a poor kid or a black kid or whatever, I'm going to feel connected. And that's why I'm saying that's the message. But for me, I remember my mum having to write a note for me when I was a kid. I was like about 10 or 11. And I had a social studies project of watching the news every day. And it's like, you just have to take notes or something for a week, pretty low stakes. And my mum had to write a note for me because I was depressed. Like I couldn't handle all those people dying and wars. I couldn't just kind of brush it off. And I'm still the same. Like I watch the news every day, but I meditate before it or something. I really can't watch hours of it. So I'm very aware of what's happening, but I take it to heart. And I think, there's just so much suffering in the world. If anything, now people can realize that this injustice is here all the time. And, now we're seeing at the coalface of that injustice of, more deaths and people who shouldn't really be at risk. They just don't have the same chances. So I think that is always there. It's always there. It's always there everywhere. And I'd like to mention with this theme of connection and composers that, John Psathis is somebody who I've talked to over the years, and he was one of my professors. And I think that he was always very open to talk as a human about being a composer, being a human. And, I think I count him as a friend now, but I think that was really helpful for me in my early years as a composer, because he has always been very open as a person. I think not necessarily talking about his feelings or something, but just saying oh, what's going on with the music. And I remember I left after a year of my first year, and he talked to me about it. And I think that he's definitely one of the people that in my own teaching practice and composing practice I think of as this is a present person. And I think that's a really important part. And it's kind of rare, now that I'm here in the United States, that not all teachers are like that, and so I think I count myself as lucky that I had him as a teacher, that's someone that's just open. Like yourself, I'm not saying you're telling everyone your feelings, but you're meeting you as a human, and there's not this kind of so much hierarchy.
As I'm sure you're aware, John Psathis is our current composer in residence.
I didn't know.
He was the first composer in residence that I interviewed. So it's up on our YouTube channel. It's great. And also he's going to help me with pre-concert talks, possibly a lot of these videos as well, because as you say, he is so open and understanding, and his level of empathy is really amazing. And then of course the fact that he's a great composer as well is just icing on the cake. I just want to go back to two of the things that you talked about. We were talking about this idea of audience connection. Mm-hmm. And I subscribe to this idea that there are actually three pillars that are involved in a performance. There's you, the creator, us, the performers, and then I think the base, which is the interpreters of your work, which is not you, it's not us, it's the audience themselves. So where do you stand? Some of your works are attempting to create an environment where one can mull over the idea of specific topics. What if an audience takes something else away from your work? Like they're moved by your work, but they're moved in a different direction. Where do you stand with this idea of it's the audience that actually interprets the meaning?
I really think that music brings what it is you need to feel at the time. For me, personally, one of the reasons I like lyrics, and my lyrics are pretty simple often, but one of the reasons I like lyrics is because, yes, they can bring this meaning, but still people, even with the most explicit, simple, repeated lyric, you're going to bring what your memories are and your feelings are and what you need to know. And maybe even the same song now might sound different to you years down the line. So I don't have some kind of, there is a very controlling aspect of being a composer, and I'm not going to lie that I don't have that. I do. I love harmony. I love rhythm. And so I kind of want to, I love improvising. And then I also love I want those chords, or I want the harp. So, I feel those things pretty strongly, that I just sometimes love to create a thing. And to me, the words and the music come at the same time. I don't every so often I'm improvising, I'll write poetry. I have a sort of secret practice of just always writing poetry but not all the time, but it's never stopped. So sometimes I'm going to improvise singing or something and I just improvise the poetry. But when I'm composing, I compose the song and the harmony and the lyrics all together. So in a way, the harmony is a lyric, or, the lyrics are a harmony, they're together for me. And I sometimes find it a bit hard to write instrumental music because there is this meaning in there, but I think people can sense an emotive quality about the music that I write. Unfortunately, I think quite a lot of it's a bit melancholy. People used to think it was angry, but it's usually not. It's more some kind of existentialist, melancholy. I wrote this song for Trayvon Martin when he was murdered, and I just went to the piano and wrote the whole song all at once. And because sometimes something is in you and the whole thing comes at once. And sometimes something will take years to write. So I don't mind what the audience experiences from that. I just hope they experience something. And that's why I miss live music, and I fear for the ways that we might get pushed to engage, because personally what I find inspiring is one, writing music knowing that people hear it live. I love recording as well, so I love that people hear it. But even when I do a recording, I have a live show. So I love to have the party, the celebration, the kind of like, hey, we released the album and that thing. So I think, and I get really inspired by just going to see live music. I go dancing, I go to free jazz, I go to classical stuff, I go to all sorts of stuff. For instance, if you guys hadn't asked me to write the piece, I wouldn't have written that piece. I only write pieces when they're going to be played. Otherwise, I don't write them. So I'm not a composer that feels like the secret world after I'm dead will find this trunk and open it up and they'll find all my scores, and I don't care. It's like, if it's not going to get played, I don't care. So I really love this connection with the audience.
Going back to a word that you used a few minutes ago, this idea of meditation, we can segue back to Blessings as Rainfall, because the lyrics of this are very mantra-like, and I think they're based on a poem by Kalu Rinpoche, is that correct? Rinpoche.
Yeah, it's a Buddhist text, that was translated by Chimmy Shaw at Corrine in Australia.
It was fabulous. And in terms of connection, so in this series of videos that I'm making for Orchestra Wellington, I'm sort of trying to walk the walk. So in addition to talking to board, management, musicians, composers, I'm also talking to audience members. And one of the audience members raved about you and your work, saying it was one of the most beautiful things that she had seen.
Wow.
I know, using it as an no, not that I'm surprised, but oh my God.
I'm definitely surprised.
But using it as an example of what I suppose we do as an orchestra in terms of juxtaposing, because I believe we started with you, then we went to a Prokofiev piano concerto, and then a Tchaikovsky symphony. But yeah, I just wanted to say that this just happened last week. I was speaking to Leanne Duncan, her name is, and she was just raving about your work. So this sense of connection through music and through the years as well is really, really strong. And it pleases me because it's a world premiere commission.
It was really helpful for me to do that piece with you, because in fact, I don't like to split myself up into too many kind of things that I do, but being a singer and one thing is singing and playing the piano, which I've always done. But singing in a classical setting, even reading the score of my own score, like noticing when I'm supposed to come in, it's so silly. I used to play bassoon and clarinet in an orchestra, and of course I was just counting and playing. But there's something about singer brain. I know people kind of think that singers are silly, but I just think singing, I know because I've played so many different instruments, singing is just really hard. It's like running a marathon and also kind of thinking. So you have this body thing where everything in your body you have to be aware of, and it's hard. It's hard to do that. So there is no way I could have, I'm sure I could do that performance again and do it better now. My voice is even stronger, but there's no way that I could have done it without you, because I had to at a point go, somebody else has got this, and it's got to switch off my composer correcting that note brain or something. So I needed you to just take care of that, because there's maybe the listeners don't know, but part of working with orchestras is going in, having a practice session where they're playing it and you say like, oh, this is a bit slow, this is a bit slow, this is a bit fast, at letter K, we're going to do this, you know, and I could only really afford to do that once, I think. And then I, you know, over to you. But yeah, I definitely can't do those two things very easily. And I thought it would be easier to sing than really it is, even though I've always sung. I did one classical tour here with a group called Useful Chamber. And I just found it so hard to even count. Yeah, there's something about singing which just takes all of your focus, like completely. It's like, it's really, I do yoga, it's really a lot like that. You're just like, this thing's happening here, but this is happening here, and you have this, and you can't think about the sound because it doesn't sound the way it does, and you know. So all of that, the way to be able to communicate as a singer, you know, that it's quite a big thing actually. I think it probably looks a lot easier than it is singing. Because everyone can sing. I'm not saying it's hard to always just sing nicely, but projecting in a classical setting is tricky, and I'm not a classical singer. I've always taken classical lessons, probably about half my adult life at least, and then even before while I was at high school I did as well, but I don't sing other works, I just sing my own works. So secretly I can sing some other stuff, but I don't sing that for anyone.
Your performing career, your composing career is extraordinarily varied. Of course, you know, you've written these orchestral works, you've written chamber works, but you've also worked with people such as Luscious Jackson. You appeared on the David Letterman show, which is super cool. You're an assistant professor at NYU. Tell us a little bit about the kinds of groups that you sing with and that you perform with.
I've been doing this really cool project, like Afrobeat trip hop electronic band. It's me and a co-producer, or maybe I'm the co-producer in this, Alejandro Benzan Escobar, and we did stuff with a few different Ghanaian rappers. So that's kind of think dancing, electronic fun, that kind of stuff. I'm also in a band called the Miseries here, and that's like really crazy digital hardcore improvised music. It's really fun. We did some cool film soundtracks. We did one to Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times. We did The Perfect Human recently, and we were about to go to Swarthmore and do another one, but then the pandemic happened. And I'm also in a band in Paris called Tre Zampe. It's an improvising band again. And yeah, we will have, all these bands have released this, and they're all on my website if anyone wants to look at these other weird projects that I do. So yeah, all of them are things that they're all still current. We're still like sending each other emails with files and collaborating and organizing stuff. It's definitely a bit trickier now. Oh, I should say my trio was amazing. My New York trio was really amazing. We just did a release show really a couple of weeks before we had to go away, like be locked down, and that's with Dylan Green on drums. He's also a classical percussionist, which is super cool because we're going to collaborate with Public Quartet, a string quartet here for my next recording, and a really great bass player called John Toscano, who I've played with on and off for years. So I have a really cool, like, it's a jazz band setup, but I'm not a jazz musician. I improvise, like I would say free jazz, but I write songs. So that's kind of a piano, bass, and drums, electronic or not. Yeah, we have this really cool project with a string quartet, Public Quartet. And so my idea for that is to write some semi-improvised passages. I chose Public Quartet. They've played at the Met. I mean, those guys are everywhere. Really well-known string quartet, but they are also improvisers. And so I really wanted to play with this thing that I do, but do that with some classical musicians, and between the classical music and the improvising. So I'm really excited about that recording project again. Right. Paused because of COVID-19. I was just about to have a retrospective of my classical works in Nashville, Tennessee, like a whole lot of my works. I've never had that before. Like large chamber ensemble piece, piano piece, string quartet plus all paused. And then I'm writing another large ensemble piece for plus electronics, much like the piece that I wrote for you guys, because it also has a Buddhist text. And this one is about like really a planet protector. And I really thought it was important with climate change to think about that. I have a whole lot of things that are going on all the time.